Hello there, I'm Alex, and I sell cheese for a living. As a cheesemonger and certified cheese professional, I have helped thousands of customers find their favorite cheese. Each episode, I'll share what I've learned from behind the counter as we dive into the vast, fascinating world of all things cheese. In this episode, we're going to talk about how cheese eating has changed through the decades, and to look at how cheese trends have evolved, what drove those changes, and what they say about the way people eat cheese today. Cheese is one of the oldest foods humans still eat today. Archaeological evidence suggests humans have been making cheese for more than 7,000 years. Now, milk is fragile and spoils quickly, but turning it into cheese allowed early farmers to preserve nutrition, travel with the food, and it was a way to store dairy for long periods of time. While cheese itself is ancient, the way people eat it is constantly changing. Every generation interacts with cheese a little differently. Sometimes it becomes a staple ingredient in everyday cooking. Others, it becomes the centerpiece of entertainment. Sometimes it turns into a luxury product associated with restaurants and specialty shops. And others, it becomes the star of viral internet videos. When you look closely, cheese trends often mirror the broader food culture of the time. Changes in technology, food, in general, travel, economics, agriculture, and social media all influence how people discover and enjoy cheese. Over the last century alone, cheese in the United States has gone through several major cultural shifts. In one era, it was mostly hidden inside casseroles. In another, it became party food. Later, it evolved into gourmet specialty products and farmstead craft food. Today, it spreads through social media faster than any cookbook ever could. Let's begin about 100 years ago. In the early 20th century, cheese in the United States was largely viewed as a practical household ingredient. Most people were not building cheese boards or discussing regional cheese styles. Instead, cheese was valued because it was filling, nutritious, and useful in everyday cooking. Cookbooks from the early 1900s show cheese appearing in a wide range of dishes. Think of baked macaroni, savory pies, rare bits, casseroles, and cheese sauce served over vegetables or toast. It provided protein and richness to meals that often needed to feed large families on tight budgets. At the same time, the dairy industry was changing rapidly. Industrialization made it possible to produce cheese on a much larger scale. Improved refrigeration, transportation, and factory production allowed cheese to move farther from farms to growing cities. Here are a couple examples of trendy ways to eat cheese from this era. Cheese in casseroles and baked dishes. Home cooking relied heavily on baked meals that could feed many people at once. Macaroni and cheese, scalloped potatoes with cheese, and baked vegetable dishes appeared frequently in community cookbooks. Welsh rarebit, a warm cheese sauce poured over toast, became a tavern and household favorite. This dish highlighted melted cheese as a more comforting and filling meal. Food scientists and manufacturers began experimenting with processed cheeses that melted smoothly and lasted longer on the shelf. These products helped stabilize milk supplies and made cheese more accessible nationwide. During World War I and World War II, governments promoted dairy consumption to support both farmer livelihoods and national nutrition. Cheese traveled more easily than fresh milk, and it could be shipped to soldiers or stored for longer periods. During this era, cheese worked quietly in the background of everyday cooking. Think of it as an ingredient in your pantry along with milk, eggs, butter, and flour. It added richness, salt, and protein to any meal you put it in. Most households bought only a small number of styles, often cheddar or processed. And this relationship with cheese would soon begin to shift as American households entered a new period of social dining and entertaining. Let's cut to the 60s and 70s, where food culture in the United States began to revolve more around entertaining at home. Think of dinner parties or cocktail gatherings, and themed hosting events became extremely popular. Food was no longer about feeding the household. It was becoming part of social life and hospitality. And cheese fits perfectly into this environment. It was easy to serve, easy to share, and flexible enough to appear in both casual and slightly more elegant settings. Television and magazines played a major role in shaping these entertaining trends. Lifestyle publications regularly featured hosting guides, party menus, and elegant table spreads. Cheese dishes frequently appeared in these spreads because they were approachable while still feeling a little special. A couple examples from this era would be fondue, traditional Alpine style winter survival food in the 60s and 70s in America, became party food, and it became one of the most recognizable food trends of the 70s. Guests would gather around a pot of melted cheese and dip bread chunks into it using long forks. This experience was interactive and social, turning dinner into an activity rather than just a meal. Fondue sets became popular wedding gifts during this period. Around this time, cheese balls made a name for themselves. Cheese balls made from cream cheese and shredded various cheeses were rolled in chopped nuts or herbs and served with crackers. Some versions even included pineapple or dried beef. These appeared at countless holiday gatherings and potlucks. Party platters often included cubes of cheddar, Swiss, or Monterey Jack served with toothpicks. These platters were simple, but allowed guests to snack casually while socializing. And magazines and host guides began encouraging wine and cheese pairings for better entertainment. The idea added a sense of sophistication while still being easy to organize at home. During this era, many Americans also encountered European cheeses for the first time. International travel increased after World War II, and imported foods slowly became easier to find in larger cities. Home entertaining introduced people to the idea that cheese could stand on its own rather than only appearing inside cooked dishes. Cheese started to occupy a visible role on the table. A little later in the 80s and 90s, we look at the gourmet boom of fresh artisan cheeses. The 80s and 90s brought a new wave of curiosity about food. Restaurants expanded their menus, specialty grocery stores grew in popularity, and television cooking programs introduced audiences to ingredients from around the world. Cheese benefited greatly from this growing interest in culinary exploration. Consumers began realizing that cheese was not just a single product category, but a diverse collection of traditions, techniques, and regional specialties. With access to the internet and more cable channels, the ability to find a dish that involved cheese was much easier, and with better pictures and even step-by-step breakdowns on how to build the dish yourself. Around this time, specialty food shops and upscale grocery stores started installing dedicated cheese counters. These counters offered dozens of varieties instead of just a few familiar options. Staff members would help customers taste new cheeses, and then they would begin to educate them about where they came from. Some examples from this time in history: goat cheese started appearing on restaurant menus. Soft goat cheese became extremely popular in restaurant salads and appetizers. Its bright flavor and creamy texture introduced many diners to a different style of cheese than what they were used to. Talking about the grocery stores and their upscale food shops, imported European cheese sections started expanding. Brie, Camembert, Alpine-style cheeses, and aged hard cheeses began appearing more frequently in American grocery stores. These cheeses introduced shoppers to unfamiliar textures, aromas, and aging styles, and they ate it up. Some restaurants began offering cheese plates as a separate course toward the end of the meal. Diners could sample several cheeses alongside fruit, nuts, or bread, the beginning of modern charcuterie boards. Cheese counters, staffed by knowledgeable employees, helped guide customers through unfamiliar choices. Cheesemongers explained flavor profiles, storage tips, and pairing ideas. Food media also expanded during this period. Cooking magazines and television programs introduced viewers to regional European foods and traditional cheese-making techniques. So if you were a home cook in the 80s or 90s and you wanted to learn how to make cheese, it was the best time if you didn't have a teacher directly available to you. And some American cheesemakers used this to begin experimenting with small-scale production. Often inspired by European traditions, they explored aging methods, milk types, and regional styles. Interest in cheese shifted towards flavor, craftsmanship, and the origin. Consumers started asking where their cheese came from and how it was made. This is the era of a good cheese story and how it was so important to share with your customer. By the early 2000s, American artisan cheese had moved beyond curiosity and into a recognizable movement. Farmers markets expanded across the country. Small dairies gained attention, and consumers became increasingly interested in food transparency. Cheesemakers across the United States began producing farmstead cheeses made from milk produced on the same farm where the cheese was crafted. These producers often worked on a much smaller scale than large industrial dairies. The movement also emphasized storytelling. People became interested in the animals producing the milk, the landscape where the farms were located, and the individuals responsible for making the cheese. Cheese made directly on farms from a herd's own milk gained recognition for expressing regional milk character and seasonal differences. Cheesemakers and consumers discussed the complex flavors that raw milk could bring to aged cheeses. Educational conversations about aging requirements and food safety became more common. Producers began developing cheeses inspired by local conditions rather than simply copying European classics. This period helped define a distinct American artisan cheese identity. Cheese competitions and judging events helped introduce small producers to wider audiences and provided recognition for quality craftsmanship. This era also saw the rise of cheese education. Think classes, tastings, and professional certifications helped deepen understanding of cheese styles and production methods. For many people working in the cheese industry today, this period laid the groundwork for modern cheese culture in the United States. Now, before we talk about the broader social media cheese era, I think it's worth looking at one of the biggest forces shaping modern cheese trends: viral internet recipes. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Reels, YouTube Shorts, they have completely created a new way for food trends to spread. A single recipe can reach millions of people in just a few days, and if it looks dramatic or surprising enough, thousands of people will immediately try recreating it at home. And cheese happens to be perfect for this kind of content. It melts, it stretches, it crisps, and it breaks in visually satisfying ways. This makes it ideal for short form food videos. And I can attest, as a cheesemonger who's been working the counter for a few years, that TikTok has changed how some of my customers even purchase cheese. They will come in with a video that they've saved and they'll show it to me and say, "Do you have this?" And I'll hopefully say yes, depending on what cheese is viral that week. And not too long ago, there's even a sweet potato and cheese dish that made everyone go crazy around the holidays. Here are just a few of the top trends that I've noticed in the last few years. I go back to the baked feta pasta trend. One of the largest viral food trends of the last few years involved a block of feta cheese baked with tomatoes and olive oil, then mixed with your pasta. This recipe is so simple and so easy, but it spread very quickly online, and many grocery stores in several countries temporarily reported feta shortages. Another popular trend involves baking piles of grated Parmesan until they turn into little crispy cheese crisps, little crispy cheese chips. These are often marketed online as a low-carb snack or protein-heavy alternative to crackers. Now, these aren't a new invention, but I think that's where part of the social media trend can take over the world is you may find a recipe or a way of eating that is super popular and common in one part of the world, but someone who's never seen it or heard it, and they may have a big social audience, a big social media following, they share that recipe or way of eating, and then suddenly millions of people get on board as if it was something new. Again, cheese crisps are not a new invention or a new way of eating cheese, but for some people, when they saw it for the first time online, it changed how they viewed Parmesan. And in so many viral videos, you kind of just see someone stretching cheese. Think of a large slice of pizza with some mozzarella string pull. And how long can you make the pole? Stretching melted mozzarella has become a visual staple of internet food videos. Recipes are often designed specifically to create that dramatic, slow cheese pull for the camera. Social media has also introduced something newer to food culture: food challenges. Creators film themselves attempting unusual food experiments or extreme versions of everyday foods. Here are some examples: eating an entire wheel of cheese over a long series of videos. I think if you ate a bite of Parmigiano Reggiano every day, it would take you almost 3 years to get an entire wheel eaten. So if you have the time, you can eat a whole wheel of Parmigiano Reggiano in just under 3 years if you take a bite a day. I've seen people make massive grilled cheese sandwiches with dozens of slices, and some people even attempt a 100-layer cheese recipe. Now, These challenges turn cheese from just an ingredient into beyond entertainment. It makes it go viral. Another growing trend online is the idea of cheese as just a high protein snack. One surprising example is the way people have started eating chunks of Parmigiano Reggiano almost like protein bars. Instead of shaving it over pasta, people break off large pieces and eat them as a quick snack, often pointing out that the cheese is naturally high in protein and it's very filling. Some fitness influencers even promote aged cheeses as an alternative to processed protein snacks because they contain protein, fat, and minerals without any added ingredients. What makes these viral trends different from older food trends is the speed. In previous decades, food trends spread through cookbooks or magazines or television shows, and that process could take years. Now, a single viral video can introduce millions of people to a new recipe overnight. And when the food involves cheese, melting, stretching, crisping, and bubbling, it tends to perform extremely well on camera. And this constant cycle of viral recipes has turned cheese into one of the most visible ingredients on the internet today. Beyond individual viral recipes, social media has changed the broader culture surrounding cheese. Platforms built around photos and short videos reward foods that are colorful, textured, and visually dramatic. Cheese checks all of those boxes. Restaurants, food creators, and home cooks increasingly design dishes with visual impact in mind. Melting wheels of cheese, dramatic tableside preparations, and oversized grazing boards appear frequently in online food content. Just think of large charcuterie boards and grazing tables. These large boards filled with cheese, meats, fruit, crackers, spreads have become a staple of gatherings and celebrations. These boards emphasize visual variety and creative arrangement. Some restaurants prepare dishes directly at the table using large wheels of cheese. Scraping melted cheese over pasta or vegetables. Think of raclette for this, is a very common one where you take half the wheel, heat up the flat side, and then scrape it over your roasted vegetables. This experience becomes part of the meal's entertainment. Soft cheeses that spill open, long strands of melted cheese, and bubbling baked cheeses create memorable visuals that perform well in photos and videos. Entire social media accounts now revolve around cheese tasting, cheese board design, or cheese-based recipes. In many ways, the modern cheese moment connects back to earlier eras. Cheese remains social, shareable, and visually engaging. The difference today is scale. Social media allows those moments to reach millions of viewers instantly. Looking across these decades, patterns start to appear. Cheese trends rarely develop in isolation. They are trendy because they are popular and they fill a human need. They are closely connected to broader shifts in culture and technology. Advances in refrigeration and transportation once made large-scale cheese distribution possible. Later, international travel exposed people to regional food traditions they have never encountered before. Food media also plays a powerful role. Cookbooks, magazines, television shows, and now social media platforms all influence how people discover new foods. Economic conditions can shape food habits as well. In some eras, convenience foods became popular because households just needed a quick meal. In others, people became interested in craft production and local agriculture. Cheese continues adapting to each of these changes. Its flexibility allows it to move easily between everyday comfort food, luxury dining, and viral internet entertainment. In closing, cheese may be one of humanity's oldest foods, but the way we eat it continues to evolve. Over the past century, cheese has traveled through several cultural phases, from an ingredient in practical cooking to a cheese ball at a party, or gourmet specialty at a restaurant, to artisan craft and now a viral internet sensation. Cheese can do it all. Each generation discovers cheese in its own way, mostly shaped by technology, the culture, and the curiosity of time. If history offers any clues about the future, the next cheese trend is probably already starting somewhere. Maybe it is in a small dairy where they are experimenting with milk, a restaurant kitchen who's testing a new dish, or a creator filming their next viral recipe. However the new trend begins, chances are it will eventually find its way onto someone's plate that you know. Thank you for listening to this episode about the trends of cheese throughout the last 100 years or so. My name is Alex, and this has been The Modern Monger.